We are on our second day of absolute value function key features, and we just have two different sections today of our notes. The first one is increasing and decreasing intervals. So intervals of increase and intervals of decrease. When you talk about an interval on a graph, you're talking about a section of that graph. So you might be talking about one half of that graph or a part of that graph. So you're talking about the interval that where a certain behavior exists, basically. So intervals of increase and decrease. What we're looking at as we trace the graph, like if I were to put my finger on the left side of the graph and trace it from left to right, where is it increasing in value and where is it decreasing in value? That's basically what we're looking at. So before we start on this, let's put arrows at the end of this graph. And then we will look at the levels of increase and decrease, the intervals. Let me see if I can use my line tool to show you what I'm talking about. Let's see if I can make this a little bit thicker. Okay, so what I want to do is I want to put my pencil or my pen at the end, at the left side of this graph, and I want to trace it from left to right. Okay, and then when it gets to a turning point, I'm going to stop. So there is an interval right there. And I want to talk about what the points are on this interval. Well, first of all, this part up here, this is infinity because, well, it's actually negative infinity because it's going left to right. So if you're talking about the x-axis or going from left to right, it's negative infinity. You're looking at left and right. So over here is going to be negative infinity and over here is going to be positive infinity. We'll go ahead and label those. Where does it stop? Well, it stops right here. And where is that on the x-axis? This is all x-axis stuff, okay? So where does that line up with the x-axis? It lines up at 0. So this is 0.0 right here. So that first interval goes from negative infinity to 0. What I need to decide, though, is that a level of increase or decrease? Well, how I think of this is I think I'm driving in my car and I'm going down a hill and then I'm going back up a hill. Well, going down a hill means that I'm decreasing in altitude. So I think about this part as being the downhill side and this part as being the uphill side. So this is decreasing because I'm going in a downward direction, okay? So this is an interval of decrease is what we call it. So the decreasing interval, what I would do is I would put this as just an interval notation, negative infinity to 0, just like that. So you notice that I did not put a bracket on the 0. That is because at the 0, it's neither decreasing or increasing. It's standing still at the 0. So we don't include the 0. So our interval of decrease was from negative infinity to 0, and that's where we're going downhill, okay? When we're going uphill, that is an interval of increase. So let's define what that is. So right here, actually I wanted to do a different color. Let's do green. So the interval of increase is where I am moving uphill. And I started at this 0 again. So it still has the 0 in it. And remember, you're just tracing left to right. So you're tracing this pink part and then the green part going uphill. And it goes up to infinity. So the interval of increase is 0 to infinity. The interval of decrease is from negative infinity to 0. Let's try another one. Number 6, put your arrows at the end. I think these are screenshots from like Desmos or something. That's why they don't have arrows on them. So this one, let's look at left to right again. At this time, I'm going uphill. I'm going to use that green again. Let me get my line tool. I'm going to use green. So uphill, I'm going to use green. Downhill, I'm going to use pink. So uphill from left to right is right here. And then downhill from left to right, I'm going to use pink. So uphill, green, downhill, pink. Last time, my green was my uphill. It still is. So this is, since it's uphill, we would call this an interval of increase. We're going up. Downhill, we would call this an interval of decrease. We just need to figure out what the interval is. What are the numbers? So the left side, this is negative infinity. So it's starting at negative infinity. You don't want to think about it going towards the y. Just think about it going to the left. So left is negative infinity. And then right, the right side is positive infinity. Okay. All right. So we got to figure out what this point right here is. Where does this cross the y-axis? Well, it looks like it crossed it at 5. I covered it up, but it crosses it at 5. So my intervals are going to be negative infinity to 5 and 5 to infinity. I just need to figure out which one's which. So increasing is the negative infinity to 5. Let me get a different color. And then decreasing is my pink one, which is 5 to infinity. All right, let's look at another one. Put your arrows on here. All right, so last time, let's see, I did downhill is pink, uphill is green. So let's do that again. Downhill is pink, uphill is green. All right, let's figure out what this point is. Whoops, meant to get my drawing tool. What this point is on the x-axis. Here's the x-axis right here. -5 is there. This is -4. So this point is going to be -4. This is negative infinity. This is positive infinity. My pink was downhill. That is decreasing. My green was uphill. That is increasing. So my decreasing is negative infinity to -4. My increasing is -4 to infinity. You notice that the point that I'm finding also is the vertex. So if you can find the vertex, you'll have that point that you need to. Okay, last one. Put arrows on it. Increasing was green. Uphill is green. Downhill is pink. Uphill is increasing. Downhill is decreasing. Let's find this point right here. It crosses the x-axis at 0. So that's 0 right there. This is negative infinity. This is positive infinity. All right, so what are my intervals? My increasing interval is green. It is negative infinity to 0. My decreasing interval is, excuse me, pink, 0 to positive infinity. And that's it. So if you're looking for the levels or the intervals of increase and decrease, you're going to trace from left to right. Look at the uphill and the downhill. The uphill is your increasing interval. The downhill is your decreasing interval. And then you just got to find that vertex and find that point where it crosses the x-axis. So you can click on that and you can split your screen. I've made my Desmos kind of small here. And we're going to practice typing in these functions. So there are 4 of them. And so we're going to go ahead and type all of them in, and then we will put a sketch on our PDF here. And I'll show you another way that you can put the graph here if you want to. So let's just practice typing these in. So go to your Desmos and just click on the first line and type in F parentheses X parentheses equals. So you're going to have that on every line. Sometimes you don't have to actually enter that part, but you might as well get used to it. And then enter negative, and your absolute value symbol is below your backspace symbol, but you have to hit shift in that key. So it's actually shift \. and then x minus 5. Go ahead and enter that in, and then your absolute value key again. The other way you can do that is to bring up this keyboard down here, but it's actually easier just to type it in. So if we look, this is, it graphed it for me right here. So go to the second line and go ahead and type in f parentheses x parentheses equals, whoops, and then absolute value 0.5x plus 3, absolute value minus 4. Okay, so take a few minutes and go ahead and enter the last two, and I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to pause my video and enter the last two. Okay, so I just want to show you a couple of things about Desmos if you didn't see this in the last video. Okay, so you can move the graph around. If you just grab it and move it around. You can make just one of them visible. So I'm going to make all these invisible and make the red one visible. You can click on the graph itself and you can hover over the points, or you can click on the points and it will, the Y and X intercepts and the vertex, which in this case, the vertex is the X intercept as well. So you can click on that point, you can click on this point, and it will hold that there, and it will show you what the ordered pairs are. So if we were going to sketch number 9, and this is the only one we're going to sketch. I'm going to show you how to paste a picture on there instead of sketching. So let me make sure I've got it typed in correctly. It looks like I do. So if I was going to sketch this, what I would do is I would take my drawing tool and actually, let me do this. There we go. Okay. All right. Sorry. That drives me crazy. Okay. So this point, I would sketch what would look about like 5, 0 on here. So maybe my 5, 0 is going to be right here. And then my 0, -5 would be here. And then I take my line tool, because it's the easiest way to do this, and I would kind of sketch my graph, okay? And then my drawing tool to put my arrows on there, and then that's my sketch. All right, let me show you another way you can do this if you don't want to sketch this. So I'm going to go back to Desmos, and I'm going to make that one invisible, and I'm going to make the next one visible. Drag it down. I'm going to make it smaller too, so I can see it a little bit better. Now, let's see if I can adjust it a little bit. Okay, so I'm going to make sure that these points show the vertex, the intercepts. Okay, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my snipping tool, and I'm going to snip a picture of this, and then I can save it as, I think it was number 10. So if I go over to where that lesson is, which is right here, if I save that as number 10, I can go back and get it. So then I'll do the same thing with this one. Make sure I click on my vertex and my intercepts. I don't know if y'all can hear that, but somebody is like hammering some nails into a wall. It's driving me crazy. So there's number 11. So this doesn't take too long to do this. And then I'm just going to put these on my PDF. All right, and there's the last one. It's got an intercept there and a vertex. All right, so those are visible. And I think that was number 12, if I'm not mistaken. So now I'm going to go back. I'm going to minimize this and get this back to full size. And what I'm going to do, instead of sketching number 10, I'm going to insert that image. So I'm going to find that image. There it is right there. So number 10, and I'm going to drop it, and I'm going to make it smaller so that it's not, oops. So it's not infringing on the other side. And there we go. Now I don't have to sketch it. Number 11, we'll go get that one. And you can always do this. This is not going to bother me a bit if you put these in here like this instead of trying to sketch them. Okay, so there's that one. And number 12. And that one's really small already. So, all right, so I don't have to sketch them if I do that. Now let's talk about what our key feature is here. So I'm just going to tell you, this is probably the most difficult key feature to get, to understand. We are looking for intervals again. So we're looking for parts of the graph where f of x, and that just means the y's, okay? So where the y's are greater than 0, which means they're positive. So where they're positive and where they're negative. So if you think about what a graph looks like. So if I have a graph, a coordinate plane that looks like this, think about your y values. Okay, so here's 0, 0. The y values are positive up here in this section right here. So all the y values are going to be positive, and I'll just do green, up here in this section. Because the y's, this is where the positive numbers are. Down here are negative numbers. So my negative y values, I wonder if red will do. Yeah, we can do red. So my negative y values are down here. So what I'm looking for is what part of the graph is up here and what part of the graph is down here. Well, let's look at number 9. I'm going to use my same two colors to highlight. I think I can just do a box highlighter to highlight. Yeah, that works really well. The part of the graph where the y's are positive, and highlight the part of the graph where the y's are negative. Okay. I'm going to do the same thing on all of these. So the part of this graph where the y's are positive is everything above the x-axis. And you can do the same thing. You can use your box highlighter to do this. This is the negative section down here. Let's do the same thing on these two. So let's see, above the x-axis is right here. And I'll go ahead and do that one over here too. Above the x-axis is there. It's hard to see on that because of the other one underneath it. Below, or negative, is right there. So I want to look at number 9. And I want to determine, is there any part of this graph in the green area? Is there any part of this graph in the f of x is positive or y is positive, however you want to say that? So this is the positive section. This is the negative section down here. So is there any part of that graph? The graph is right here. Is there any part of that function that is up here? There isn't. So what we would say for f of x is greater than 0, in other words, the positive section, this positive section, is we could say does not exist. You could also do like a 0 with a line through it showing there's no solution or whatever. It doesn't matter. So whatever you put right here, as long as you know, as long as I know that you know that there's none of that, no part of that graph that's up there, that's fine. Okay, so what part of this graph is in the negative section? All of it. Okay, so what I want to write here is it's an interval. So it's going to be negative infinity to positive infinity because that is all real numbers. So all of my y values are down here in the negative section. All right, now let's look at one that's a little bit different. Okay, so I want to look at this one a little bit bigger. Now, this graph, part of it is in the positive section and part of it's in the negative section. I want you to put arrows on the end of these things too, okay? We are looking at x values. So we're going to be using this number right here. We're going to be using this number right here. And this one right here, maybe. So on these ordered pairs, let's see, what is that? The 0, -1. Oh, actually, we don't need that one. That's the y-intercept. We're looking for numbers that are on the x-axis, so maybe this one. The part in the negative section, let's look at that first, okay? So the part in the negative section goes from this point right here. It goes down this way, and then it comes back up and it stops. I am looking for the endpoints. So there's an endpoint and there's an endpoint. That's the interval, okay? So the endpoints are the x values too. So negative 14 is one of them. And then over here, positive 2 is one of them. So my interval, where it's negative, which is this part right here, and you know what? You can cross this out and put negative if you want to. I don't care. The y's are negative from negative 14 to positive 2. Okay, so that I can see all of this on one screen, I'm going to write negative from negative 14 to positive 2. And it's an interval, so we put it in parentheses. Okay. This one, the part of the graph that is in the green is two different parts of it. So let me kind of show where those are. I'll use the screen. So this part right here is in the green, and this part right here is in the green. So it's two different intervals here. Let's put our arrows on that. What I'm looking at is, I am still going to use this number and this number, okay? But this right here, since it's going to the left, this is negative infinity. And this right here is going to the right, it is positive infinity. So I need to just determine what are those intervals. So the positive part, which is green here, I have two different intervals. The first interval is negative infinity to negative 14. The second interval is 2 to positive infinity. And I have that symbol. Remember that U symbol we used the other day? I'm going to use that U symbol in between them. So what this means is negative infinity to negative 14 or 2 to positive infinity are where the y's are positive. And let's try another one. Don't give up on me yet. Okay, let's try this one. What part of this graph, and again, I'm not worried about the f of x is greater than 0 or less than 0. I don't like how that's worded. We're going to look at the positive side, and you know what? We can write it up here. And then we're going to look at the negative side. We'll put it right here. Okay, so where are the x's positive? Okay, so it starts right here. And it goes up this way and then back down. But where does it end is what I'm looking for. I'm looking for endpoints. So this is an endpoint right here, the 0, and then the 4 are endpoints. So positive from 0 to 4. That's it. Negative is a little bit more complicated because it's two different intervals, but it starts at negative infinity. The left side's always negative infinity. The first interval starts at negative infinity and ends at 0. So it goes from here to here. That's hard to see. Can you see? Maybe you can see that better. So it goes from there to there. So negative, one of the intervals is negative infinity to 0. The other one is from 4 to positive infinity. So I put my U symbol, then 4 to positive infinity. All right, what I want you to do, I want you to look at this one. I'm going to do positive up here. I want you to see the difference in this one and the one we just did. What part of this graph is in the red? None of it. So we're going to either write does not exist or just write does not exist. Or you can write none, or I don't care how you put it, just so you know, so that I know that you know what you're talking about. None of it is in the red. Well, what part of it is in the green? All of it. So that is negative infinity to positive infinity. That's all you need to know. The only time it gets a little bit more complicated is when you have part of it in the red and part of it in the green and part of it in the red. And then you have different intervals. Okay. So I'm going to give you classwork on this, and we're going to go through some of these together. So please be sure that you attend the live lesson today. because this is one of the hardest things that you're going to do in Math 3 is these key features when we first start. Later on, when you're used to them, you'll be able to do any kind of graph like that. But for right now, please make sure that you attend the live lessons so that you can so that we can go through some of these together.